All right, everybody.
Hey,
Is it 4
Gavin.
o'clock?
Yes,
It is. Yep.
Are we ready?
yes, you're recording and live on YouTube.
Great.
Go
All
for
right,
it.
we're going to start the Madison Board of Ed Policy Committee meeting. We have agenda and policy notes from Shipman and Goodwin, and we're going to start with policies for rescission. The first policy is 5120.5 social services. I would recommend that we waive the second read. Does anybody want to make any comments or have questions or discuss this policy? It's 5120.5 social services. Shipman and Goodwin recommend repealing the policy because its requirements are addressed comprehensively by federal and state laws, including the Individuals with Disabilities Education Act.
Certainly support that. Thank you.
All right, so we recommend to forward to the board for rescission. Yes? Gail? Great. Okay. Then we have policy 9650, policy communication / dissemination. This is a 9000 series, so I would recommend the 2 reads. This bylaw is not required and they recommend repeal. In addition, it may be outdated and that it contemplates distribution of physical copies of the policy manual. So I say that we recommend to the board to rescind, but have 2 reads. It does require a 2/3 vote because it's a 9000 series. Questions or comments? Committee members, we vote to rescind?
Yes.
Yes.
Great. Policy 9700, school board communications. This bylaw is not required. They recommend repeal. Any thoughts, questions, comments? This is also 9000 series, so it will require a 2/3 vote. So we'll do the 2 reads. My only thought was if anybody wanted to keep something regarding school board communications, like just in general, how we handle it, how typically board members don't respond necessarily directly back to the public, but we forward it to the appropriate person or to the board chair who will respond back to the individual. If we wanted to put something in there, then I would recommend that we not have it in our bylaws, that maybe we would put it in like the 1000 series. But it's Shipman and Goodwin don't see a reason to keep it. Does anyone have any comments or thoughts on this?
I agree with you, Diane. I would still like it in there for the reasons that you had mentioned, but I don't feel strongly if it stays here or goes to the 1000 series.
Well, I don't think it's really a bylaw. It doesn't really, I mean, I guess it could stay in the 9000, but it sounds more like something that we would have in a community series of like how we respond to the public.
Diane, if I may, there are a couple of
Yeah.
notes in your committee's bylaw and as well as your officer's bylaw speaking to who speaks on behalf of the board when communicating with the public, that being the chair, and then the chair can designate who else might respond. So it is kind of touched upon in other more concrete bylaws that Shipman has.
I don't feel strongly that we need to keep it and move it to the 1000 series, but I just wanted to mention that as an option in case anybody felt strongly about it. Galen, what do you think?
I think we should rescind it. It's covered by what So said.
Maureen, are you good with that? Oh, go ahead, Seth.
I would just add, to the extent that we want to like make the public aware of how constrained we are in our communications with the public, maybe we can come up with something that goes on the website if there's not already a blurb there. But I do see value in maybe doing something not in the policies to that, to that extent, but I have no problem with rescinding this.
I think that's a good idea.
Oh, I'm sorry. I agree with that. And I also think it's important as new board members come on, to be reminded about this, how you can reply to emails and things like that.
I think that's a good idea to maybe have something on the website and then we can rescind this policy.
And then just one thing to follow on to what Maureen said. I believe a statute passed that requires new board members to undergo some training. That training is provided by CABE, Connecticut Association of Boards of Education. So at some point in the future, just to put a thumbtack in this, we may need to I don't know that we need to develop policy because as we see from Shipman and Goodwin, their standard modus operandi is to tell us that if there's statute, we don't really need a policy. But we do need to just take steps to make sure that future new board members do receive that professional development.
I think if we need a policy, Shipman and Goodwin will definitely tell us. All right, so if the committee members are good with rescinding this, we can send that forward to the board. Okay, so now we're looking at policies for review. The first policy is 5120.9, homeless students and its associated regulation. So you should have a copy of the current policy, and then you should have a copy of a much shorter revised policy. And then you should have the 5120.9 regulation. I don't know if it should have the title homeless children and youth the same as the policy. It's not actually on it, but it's the same. So this is in the 5,000 series. I would recommend 2 reads. So Shipman and Goodwin say recommend repealing this policy 5120.9 homeless students and replacing it with the model policy homeless children and youth for consistency and legal compliance. And the regulation was also changed. Any comments, questions, or thoughts?
And for me, thank you.
You good with that, Galen?
Yeah.
All right, so we can recommend rescind and replace. The next policy is 9540 transaction of business. They recommend repeal of 9540 meetings, procedures / bylaws and replacing with their model bylaw transaction of business for consistency and legal compliance. And we would also rescind and replace 9210 board member authority because it's replaced by the new transaction of business. And the same with 9540.13 reporting of board meeting business. And Shipman and Goodwin's note says the bylaw is not required. They recommend repeal to the extent this bylaw clarifies that the board acts as a whole and that individual board members shall make no commitments for the board. This issue is addressed by the model bylaw transaction of business, which we recommend for adoption. So we would be recommending the rescind and replace of 9540 meetings, procedures, bylaws, 9210 board member authority, and 954013 reporting of board meeting business, and replacing it with 9540 transaction of business. Any questions or comments? Problems, issues, thoughts?
No, I think that's pretty straightforward. Thank you.
Okay, so if all the go ahead, Gowan.
Well, I do have a question. So if we look at the existing bylaw 9210, right?
Mm-hmm.
Where it specifies specific powers and duties, where else in the policy is that designated?
9210.1 or the old 9210 board member authority.
Okay, never mind. I got my numbers.
Galen, Diane, if I may chime in just quickly, this one was a little messy with Shipman in the sense that there's some overlap, especially when it pertains to 9210, the current one that we have, board member authority. For it to be fully replaced, it needs the new adoption of 9210, which is role of board and members, which is the next one on your list, actually.
Got it.
Oh, okay.
And as well as 9540. So there's about 3 or 4 Addison policies that require the 2 Shipman policies that are on the agenda together to really cover everything. It wasn't the cleanest one where I could take a bunch and replace with one,
Okay.
but that's why they're all there together.
Okay, thank you.
I see what you're saying. Okay. So we have the newly revised 9210 role of board and members.
Mhm.
The current policy we'd be rescinding is the 9210 board member authority.
Right.
But we would also need to adopt the 9540 transaction of business. Okay. Let's make a note. So the 9210 role of board members is also replacing the 9210.1 responsibilities of board members. Is that correct? Okay. I see. Okay. So these kind of all go together. So we would be rescinding and replacing the 9540, the 9210, the 9540.13, and we'd have to adopt 9540 transaction of business and 9210.1 responsibility of board members and 9210 role of board members. Is that correct?
9210 role of board members will actually replace responsibilities of board members, which is 9210.1.
Oh, okay. So
The way the agenda is done is it's the name of the existing policy because that is what's being reviewed, but Shipman's new one will be 9210, which is role of board and members.
got
So
it.
basically, if you adopt transaction of business and role of board and members, that will cover the existing 9540, 9210, 9450.13, and 9210.1.
Okay. All right. So anybody else have questions besides me?
No, thank you for clarifying that.
Yeah, it's funny because when I reviewed it the first time, I got it, and then I looked at it now, I'm like, wait, what? All right. So those policies then we will recommend to rescind and replace. And then the last item on the agenda we have is 9710 school district logo and or motto, and 9720 guidelines for use of district logo and board members' names. So, okay. So you should have the newest revision, and we changed it to policy 1200, school district logo and mascot, to move it out of the bylaws. So we would be rescinding 9710 and 9720 and replacing with 1200 school district logo and mascot. So the last meeting that we had, and we had discussed all the different changes and what we wanted it to sound like, and it sounded, what we had said we wanted was that the ultimate decision is going to lie with the Board of Ed. And we had said that we liked the idea of having more specific designation of how it would be done. So you can see the changes that were made, and it's very specific regarding intent of the board and seeking advice from the superintendent, and that the intent is not to change it at will, and that we would establish a committee, and that the committee would be comprised of the chair of the Board of Ed, who would be ex officio non-voting, the superintendent, same ex officio non-voting, one or more board members, and representatives of stakeholders as the board deems appropriate. And with respect to changing the mascot, the athletic director shall be the chairperson, non-voting of the committee. And I think that was the one point that we were undecided on as to whether the AD would be voting or non-voting. I don't think we had a problem with naming him chair of the committee. And then we discussed how we would need to have a 2/3 vote of the membership of the board to make the final determination. And all of this is to make certain that it is not easy to change the logo and the mascot, so that it's not just done willy-nilly. And then the final change was that minor changes or variations to the mascot, like changing the color to honor an awareness month and adding sport-specific icons, would be at the discretion of the athletic director with approval from the superintendent. And so that would not fall under the committee guidelines. Does anyone have any comments or questions?
No, I don't. I think it's thorough. Thank you.
Galen?
I have a question about the application of it. Obviously, we haven't changed it yet. It will have to be voted on. There is currently a logo / mascot committee that is formed that does not have this makeup. I don't necessarily have a problem with that in any way, shape, or form. I'm fine with it continuing under its current makeup. I'm just wondering if and when this is adopted, do we need to change the makeup of that committee, or do we just allow if it happens before the committee work is over? Or do we just, you know,
Well,
do
I
we
mean,
just
it has
accept the
been, we
findings of
have
the
been working
committee?
on it for like 6 months, so.
Yeah.
It would have to
Yeah, I'm
go
not looking,
through
I'm not looking
2
in any way,
reads.
shape, or form to stop that process or inhibit it in any way.
Can you refresh my memory? Who is on that committee? Is there overlap?
So actually, I am on the committee. And it's the AD, Chris Farrell, who formed the committee and is chairing the committee. And I actually have a report I'm going to give tonight at the Board of Ed meeting on it. But essentially, there are, give me 1 second and I'll tell you who's on it, or mostly. So TJ, Mr. Salutary is on it. Obviously, Chris Farrell's on it. The executive secretary for the athletic department, Robin Halloran, is on it. The athletic trainer, Terry Ajaski. The health teacher, Brian, and I don't want to butcher his name, Gowan?
Yep.
Okay. A social studies teacher who's also the girls varsity field hockey coach, Sue Leckie. The cheerleading coach, Michelle O'Day. The boys varsity soccer coach, Mike Shirley. The girls varsity soccer coach, Rob McConville, and then some members of the community. I don't know them personally, so I'm not really sure, you know, if they had children in the district or they have currently. I am not sure. But there are 15 committee members, including the AD and myself.
Yeah, I mean,
So
it
I
sounds
will
like a
on the board meeting.
responsible board, and I did have a chance to look at your report that you plan to submit at tonight's meeting, the draft of it, and it looks like the work that's going on is going very smoothly and well. So I'm not looking in any way, shape, or form to hijack the proceedings. I just want to make sure that the timing of the potential adoption of this within the next couple months, if we make these changes, is not going to interfere with that longstanding ad hoc committee's work.
So I know what you're saying, and so even if we pass this tonight and send it forward to the board, it'll take two reads at the board level to pass. But we have the option of waiving any policy, any of our policies that we so choose. And I'm hoping also that I think the work is going to go fast. We've had one meeting, we're probably only going to have 2. And I think, you know, depending on how fast Chris gets to this, it could be done fairly soon. So
I would also be more concerned if it was going from this small committee to a much larger committee, because now all of a sudden we would have new opinions and ideas. But there's great representation from that committee on this one. So even if the timing didn't work out ideally, I feel like this committee would support and appreciate the work of the prior one. So I'm not concerned about passing it tonight for those reasons.
So let's read this together again. What does this say about how we would adopt? Like, I know the school naming committee that we partially modeled this after reports back to the Board of Ed with some recommended names that will occur at tonight's meeting. And then the board has the ultimate vote. Is that how this one works? Let's look at it again.
yeah, so it's the committee would be established consistent with our policy 9450.
Yeah.
So that is actually, I think, isn't that on tonight's agenda? Because it was
Yeah.
supposed to be on the last agenda. Did we pass that one already? I don't remember.
I thought we did, but
I don't know, because I thought we did, but then we had the meeting was canceled
the
last
weather
time.
delay. Yeah, maybe not.
Yeah, so I think it's actually on tonight's agenda, if I'm not mistaken. And I am confident it will pass.
And
Is
this
that right,
does,
Zoe?
yeah, sorry, go ahead.
I'm sorry, can you remind me the number again?
9450 is the policy regarding the committee.
That passed last time. That passed in December. That was
Okay,
Okay.
so it is.
So it's in place now.
And this one does call for at lines 37 through 39 for the board to then have approval by a 2/3 affirmative vote.
Right.
So it's still coming to the board anyway. I would recommend, even if this happens to get passed in its present form or a similar form, before the logo committee's work is done, that the board consider just waiving this new application of the policy and allowing the current board as currently constructed to make its recommendations to our board.
I mean, I think, the community is well represented on the current committee, and I'm on the committee, so of course I'm going to report to the board what has been looked at and what, everyone has decided on. And then obviously I would think if the Board of Ed didn't like it, we would nix it. But, Craig will of course be informed of it because Chris reports to Craig. And I would report to the board, and I would think that, whatever is chosen. So far, it's going so smoothly. Everyone is on the same page. Everyone is of the same opinion. We're really going with tradition, regarding fonts, regarding colors, regarding the icons or the logos. So it's not like it's going to be some major change, and I don't think that anybody is going to object to what the committee finally decides, but it's still going to come before the board. I mean, and I don't know if we're going to ask like Chris to present it, or I don't know.
I mean, in the spirit of this new provision or policy, we might want to go ahead and hold a vote on the board to accept the recommendations of that committee, but I don't see any need to change the committee, redo it under a 94 and 50 committee structure or anything like that.
I mean, I wasn't worried about it at the time. We went ahead and said, let's just do the logo mascot committee because like time was marching on. And like, I believe we've been looking at this particular policy for like 7 or 8 months. So,
Yeah.
it's not, I was not worried that like this was going to pass expeditiously.
Craig, do you have?
I'm comfortable with it as you recommended.
You
Yeah,
have
I
an
was
opinion,
going
Craig?
to share no concerns. I agree with you, Seth. I think the plan was always to have the committees, report to the board. I think that based on what I'm hearing, I think it will go smoothly. Like Diane said, 2 or 3 meetings total. Come before the board, present something. I think the board will be pleased. I would think, or wouldn't get out of committee because it's a strong group, and we'll be fine. As you're noting, the only difference would have been if it started earlier, you and I would have been on the committee as ex officio, but I think,
We wouldn't have a vote anyway.
Right. So.
We just saved you a couple of meetings, that's all.
Exactly. Yeah, no, I appreciate that. Like you said, Chris has kept me updated on the process. I'm comfortable with everything being discussed.
Okay.
So then the only other thing I would say is, so we would need the committee to vote to forward the policy 1200 school district logo and mascot to the board for rescind and replace. And then we would have to talk about 9720. The Shipman and Goodwin really wanted this one rescinded. And I remember at the time, Seth, you wanted to have some sort of version of it to remain. And so I just wanted you to speak to that, about guidelines for the use of district logo / board members' names. I think you were really focusing on the board member names.
Yeah, that was my concern, was the board member names part, not the logo part so much. Because I think this 9710 that we're looking to adopt today, if that's adopted, I think that's fine for logos and mascots.
But it would be adopted or replaced as a 1200 series.
Yeah.
It would move out of the bylaws. So then we
Yes.
would just need to rescind 9720, and I'm not sure what part you wanted to either keep in or revise, or because it's really this 9720 is sort of a mishmash of 9710 and then use of board member names.
Yeah, my only concern about this was that we discuss, like, do we need to have a policy addressing board members' names? Or, I mean, we all signed up. What they call in the law, we mounted the public rostrum by putting our names in for consideration for appointment or election. We're elected officials, by and large, sometimes appointed. I don't know that there's any need to have a separate policy that talks about using our names, as long as it's, limited to in letterhead, like these are members of the board, or,
Mhm.
as long as there's
Well, I
no,
think, the policy is so old that
Yeah.
it really refers to the use of our names in like publications that are provided annually in, handbooks and student handbooks and regulation manuals, and we just don't do that anymore. We don't think we have, copies to loan out or hand out anymore. And I think that was really the vast majority of the use of board member names. So it's really sort of not relevant anymore.
I agree. I just didn't know if anybody else had any other opinion about it.
So if there are no objections, then the committee would need to vote to rescind and replace policies 9710 and 9720 with policy 1200, school district logo and mascot. Galen, good with
I'm in
that?
favor. Yeah,
Fine,
Maureen?
thank you.
All right, well, that was a much easier meeting than I thought it might be. All right, so is there any public comment?
No one online.
Okay, then I guess we'll adjourn at 4:27. Thank you, everyone.
Thank you. Thank you.